Well, I think we've just been doing research. I mean, visas have long been a concern of the inbound European industry. The great news was when Schengen came out 15 years ago, and Schengen was a huge simplification for inbound visitors coming into Europe. And I think it would be wrong for us to forget quite how great it was. And back in the old days, someone coming from Indonesia or China would have had to apply for up to 6 to 8 visas to do a European tour. And this would involve up to a year of bureaucratic meddling around. The arrival of the Schengen visa was a real blessing and a simplification. It's still a huge blessing. The fact that the Schengen visa is only 3 pages long makes it one of the better visa regimes in the world. The UK, if you want to compare, is about 10 to 12 pages long, depending how you print the document out. So the Schengen visa is still good news. Notwithstanding that, the biometric requirements and the very intrusive questions that are required, even from this short visa report, are a real disincentive. We've done a survey of the main origin markets, and we estimate that a minimum of €1 billion worth of business is being put off simply by the people staring at the visa process and going, no, it's easy to go somewhere else. And I think this is one of the great faults that Europe has, is that we just assume that people will come here, and because they want to come here, they'll put up with large quantities of unnecessary bureaucracy to do so. And I think Europe, the good news is Europe's taking it seriously, and they're looking at simplifying their visa system, but they need to do it urgently. When it comes to the UK, that's the same problem, but in spades. I don't foresee any immediate improvement or reduction in the level of bureaucracy confronting incoming visitors, but it's something the UK has to start taking seriously if it's to compete in world markets. By way of comparison, we did a study of the relative impacts of Schengen and non-Schengen, and we looked at arrivals in Switzerland, and since over the period when the 10-year period after Schengen was adopted fully in Switzerland, they saw arrivals from India go up. They saw them double. In the UK, in the same period, it grew by 4%. And so there's a real competitive disadvantage in having an unwelcoming visa system. Commenting on Brexit is just a nightmare because, A, it's a nightmare, but secondly, nobody really knows what the shape of it is. We don't know if it's a millennium bug dressed up as Boris Johnson, but we're not sure if all the dire things that could occur are going to occur. And we're told, to hope for the best and plan for the worst, but planning for the worst is almost like planning for an asteroid strike, where if there's a full hard Brexit with no reciprocity from the European countries in terms of receiving UK visitors, we're looking at a crisis. We're looking at queues of up to 20 to 24 hours within the first day to get out through Kent. And we're looking at the problems of people landing in Europe off planes. Each non-EU visitor has to be asked the purpose of their visit. They have to be asked how long their visit's going to be, and if deemed necessary, they've got to be asked how they're going to support themselves on this visit, and the passport has to be inspected and stamped. Now, this takes an average of 90 seconds longer than the normal verification process which EU citizens can expect upon arrival in Europe. Now, 90 seconds doesn't sound like a long time, but if you've got 200 British people coming off a wide-bodied A300, you're looking at a delay in the region of 3 to 4 hours per plane. And this is very severe. And what's causing me real worries is not so much British people being held up at the border that's severe, it's the maelstrom of chaos that comes with it. Because our members sell the UK, they sell Europe as a destination throughout the world. And you're looking at the prospect of Chinese, Americans, Japanese, everybody being caught up in this non-EU passport queue. And this is not good news. It's the opposite of good news. It's a catastrophe. We're hoping that there's a transition period, and in that transition period where they don't enforce these regulations, that something can be worked out. but it's an example of the fact that the EU is a system which destroys red tape and bureaucracy, and we're stepping out of that system. And as a result, we're incurring several obstacles to the normal flow of tourism. That is just the passport element and the leaving the country. I think the thing that is of major concern to my members as well is the rights and roles of EU nationals working in the UK. I mean, there's a big strategic point, which is that if you're a business in the UK, particularly if you're used to dealing with Europe, and my members inherently deal with Europe, you've been able to draw on a talent pool of 600 million people. This is about to shrink to 50 million people, and this is obviously a massive commercial disadvantage. I'm told that these people, or certainly the Migration Advisory Committee, has suggested that future people coming from Europe can apply for Type 2 work visas. Anybody with any experience of a Type 2 work visa will know that this is an intensely bureaucratic process. It involves filling in forms of such complexity it is best to hire an agency to do so, and you have to wait up to 6 weeks before you get clearance and pay a fee which amounts to thousands of pounds. So this is not a brilliant way of preparing the commercial ground for a Britain that is involved in this area. It's not. It's the opposite.